Hey, so what I want to show you in this video is a method of animating that uses something called expressions. And this is a way of automating your animation process to repeat actions over and over. And so for this, what I'm doing here, and let me move my wiggle back up, is we have a series of shapes that actually only have 3 keyframes. So looking at these, 2 keyframes. So these only have 2 keyframes, but notice they keep repeating their actions. And so in one case, one is cycling, one is ping-ponging, going back, going to the end of its cycle, and then repeating back to the beginning, and then going back again, like a ping pong game would. One is an offset, so it's continuing to do the same action. And one is a cycle, so it reaches the end and then stops, starts in the beginning again, and then goes forward, stops, comes back to the beginning. And the last one is a wiggle, which is a way of just creating subtle movement in your object. So for this, I'm going to walk through sort of how I made these, but this is a template file of ways to show you what an expression is. So here, what I'm going to do is create a new shape. I'm going to make a circle. And what I want to do is just move this from one side to the other. So I'm going to create a transform, go to position, and one hotkey you can use is just P to go to position, P for position, S for scale, T for opacity or transparency, and R for rotation. Those are some good ones to know. So I'm going to go to P, initialize a keyframe, jump forward in time, and then move it over to here. And so now we'll see all I have is just this slowly moving shape, right? And let's actually do this to 1 second. All right, so it moves over and it stops. If I want to have this action loop over and over again, what I'm going to do is click on the stopwatch when holding down Alt or Option. So you have to hold down Alt or Option, which is directly next to the space bar. And when you hover over, you'll see that pop up. So this is Alt click to add or remove an expression. And when I Alt click, it sends me to this temporary window where, let's slide over a tiny bit, where I can type in some code. And this is based off of JavaScript. So I'm going to start typing in loop, and you'll see that it gives me some suggestions of what I can type in. This is nice. This is a newer feature that they put in 2020. And loop out. And I'm going to hit enter. And then inside of this, I'm going to write quote. So 2 quotes, and you write 1 and it just automatically does a second one. And I'm going to go down to cycle. And notice this is L lowercase, O uppercase, so it's camel case, and then lowercase cycle, but it'll autofill it for you. Once you've completed writing this inside here, you want to click outside the window. So I'm going to zoom out real quick. And now what you'll see is this is going to repeat back to the beginning. So it goes to the end and repeats back. So even though we only have 2 keyframes, it's going to go back to the beginning. Now, if I change the second one and move it closer, which would adjust the speed of my motion, notice it happens a lot faster. If I extend it out, it's going to do the opposite, where it is going to go a lot more slowly. Like so. So this is cycle. Let's go back to 1 second. Now if I type in ping pong, this is going to reach the end and then go back to the beginning. So it's going to go from one side to the other and back and forth. Cool. And then the last one is, and just to see what this looks like if I move it much more closer to each other, very fast. And let's look at if I easy ease them by pressing F9. You see that it's got a little bit softer, right? Now, if I go in and do continue, and I'm going to turn this back to linear interpolations. or offset, sorry. If I do offset and click out, notice that it continues and just goes way off the screen. Let's slow this down. You'll see that it technically should stop here, but what offset does is it just keeps continuing the same pattern that it had before. And since it's linear, it's going to keep continuing 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So if you need to have something like clouds move slowly in the background, you could do it this way if you didn't want to have them repeat. So just like that. Now, the last one is wiggle. And I'm going to turn off the position. And the way to delete the keyframes is actually you can just click that off, but notice I get an error because there's still an expression here. So I'm going to delete this out and write wiggle. And wiggle takes two numbers. The first number is the amount of wiggles per second, and the second number is how far off you want it to wiggle. So for example, if I write 2 wiggles per second and I want it to be within a range of 10 pixels, this is going to just do a very subtle sort of movement. But if I type in, let's see, if I do 50 wiggles per second, you can see that it becomes a lot more anxious, right? And if I want it to go outside those 10 pixels on either side, if I write 100, we'll see that it has a lot more movement there. So it's staying within that box of 100 pixels from its original point and going 50 times per second. So if I slow this down to 3, you'll see that those become a lot smoother and a lot less anxious. It feels more exploratory than feeling like it's trying to burst out from somewhere. And so this can also apply, Command X, pause. If I go to my scale by pressing S, Option or Alt click, I could put a wiggle in this, and it's going to do something a little bit weirder, but this would also work. So this is an intro to using expressions. I find them to be extremely helpful, and they don't just operate on shape layers. They operate for effects. For anything you want to keyframe, they will work. So for example, if I get rid of this expression here, and I go to the stroke of this layer, and let's increase the stroke width like that, I can create a keyframe here, stroke width, jumping forward to make it a little bit bigger. And if I said something like loop out and ping pong, and that starts to look pretty cool.